Thank you. I now move to the spokesperson for the official opposition, James Wilde.
Thank you very much, Sir Mark, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Again, I congratulate the honourable member for Basingstoke for securing his first debate in Westminster Hall on such an important topic for children and parents in Hampshire, and it's good to see a number of them in the gallery today to listen to the debate. And it's the third such debate on this topic which I've taken part on since the election. I think that just represents the importance of this issue to members beyond Hampshire and across the whole of the country, and indeed in Northern Ireland, who all can see the challenges and the demands facing the sector. And those problems are familiar to us all. It's been mentioned already. The National Audit Office report last week into support for children and young people with SEND highlighted the 140% increase that there's been in the number of children with education and health care plans since 2015, and a 93% increase in Hampshire since 2019 alone. As has been mentioned, overall, half of those plans are not delivered within the 20-week timeframe, although in Hampshire I think around 3/4 are issued on time, which is something that my own county of Norfolk could aspire to get to. And the NAO also recognised the significant increase in high needs funding to £10.7 billion, which was put in place by the last government. But the demand continues to grow, and there are still big deficits in local authorities that need to be addressed. So that report highlighted the need for whole system reform and an integrated approach to improve the outcomes, which has rightly been mentioned, and the financial sustainability indeed, of funding. And it recommended research to understand the root causes driving the increases in SEND and demand for EHC plans. And I know that the department is funding some work, I think through University of Newcastle and others, to look into those such issues, as well as action to put the budgets of local authorities onto a sustainable footing. And I was a member of the Public Accounts Committee a few years ago where we had another NAO report which looked at the SEND system, identified similar problems. And the report that we as a committee put forward helped inform the SEND and AP improvement plan which the last government came forward with, because we all recognise, we all accept there needs to be reform of this system. It is not working at the moment. And first of all, we need to have a national framework and standards to address the inconsistent support across the country. And the previous government's plan did set out a blueprint for a unified system for SEND and AP driven by new national standards. And the first area we were going to bring forward was around speech and language therapy. And in a recent written answer to me, the Minister confirmed that that's something that the government is still considering doing, which we welcome. And the Honourable Member for Strangford referred to the powerful impact that early diagnosis and access to speech and language therapy can have. And it's great to hear stories like that, and they should be far more often told. And we also need to improve the EHCP process, because as the Honourable Member for Basingstoke's constituent said, it shouldn't be this hard. And as constituency MPs, we see families who've had to battle and we help them to get through the system, but they shouldn't have to come to us in order to do that. So our plan also committed to improving the timeliness of those plans through a standardised and digitised approach. And I would like to know from the Minister whether the government is going to be proceeding with those proposals as well. And the second area where we need reform, and again I think there is a lot of consensus here, is around building capacity and expertise in the mainstream schools and focus on early help. And as I said in the House last week in the urgent question, we wholeheartedly support the focus on inclusivity, which means improving skills and training in the SEND workforce with a particular emphasis on early intervention, and sharing the real expertise that there is in the specialist schools with those working in the mainstream settings. I've referred in previous debates where I've been to specialist schools, and the teachers there are desperate to get into state schools, into mainstream schools, and talk about the activities and the expertise they have to support children with those needs in a mainstream setting. However, some people do clearly need specialist school support, and I understand Hampshire has been expanding such provision with 3 new schools, including one that was approved, I think, shortly before the election, which I hope the Minister will confirm is not part of the review of free schools that has been put in place, but will be proceeding and will be funded. And Hampshire is one of the counties, like my own of Norfolk, which spends a huge amount of money on transporting children to school for specialist provision. And the Honourable Gentleman for Basingstoke referred to the impact that has on children being stuck in taxis or buses travelling long distances for learning. And the honourable member for North East Hampshire also talked about the impact that has on parents in terms of their ability to work, and also, importantly, the safety of children getting to bus stops far from their home. And the third area where we need to focus is around partnerships between education and health groups working together to lead the change. The NAO said the current system has misaligned incentives, accountabilities and priorities across the system, which creates challenges in having a whole system approach. So collaboration between the key partners is very important, and the last government proposed bringing forward measures for SEND and AP partnerships, and we look forward to the Children and Wellbeing Bill and scrutinising the proposals that look to achieve the same outcome. But the question is, we all really want to see a bit more leg from the government about what their plan is for reform and for inclusivity. We know that the SEND team within the department has been moved into the schools unit to help bring greater focus, which sounds perfectly sensible. And in yesterday's budget, there has been referred to an additional £1 billion for SEND and AP funding. And additional funding for SEND is needed and is welcome. But I suspect that honourable members and families listening to the budget would expect this to be used to provide additional support to their children and the inclusive practices which the honourable member for Southampton Hitchin referred to. However, can the Minister confirm the government actually expects £865 million of that £1 billion to be used by local authorities to reduce their deficits in SEND? Clearly, financial sustainability and addressing deficits, including the statutory override, which a number of members have referred to and which I've referred to in every other debate that we've had here, is very important. But we should be clear about where the extra £1 billion of funding is going and what we're actually going to see on the ground as a result. And beyond funding, the Minister has regularly said we need significant change, but despite last week's urgent question, we're still lacking clarity on what that change looks like. Although one thing the Minister did say in response to that was that the government will be looking at any legislation that needs to be amended or brought in to achieve our vision for an inclusive mainstream education. Can the Minister confirm she's referring to the 2014 Act there, which established EHCPs? And what is her time frame for potentially reviewing that legislation? Is her intention that the number of EHCPs are required is reduced? And will she consult widely before implementing any such changes? In yesterday's budget, the government did put up taxes by £42 billion, but actually one of the areas where they were honest with the electorate they would put up taxes was their 20% education tax. But we now have the OBR assessment, which is up to 37,000 pupils will leave or not enter the independent school sector as a result of this new tax. And many of them may be in independent schools, which offer specialist support for children. There are more than 100,000 children in specialist schools who do not have an EHCP. That is children whose parents have decided that that's the best place for their child to be educated. Yet in response to the technical note consultation, the government has refused to exempt them from this new tax, as it believes there must be a formal independent assessment that a child's needs cannot be met in the state sector. So I repeat a question I've asked before, as I don't think I've had an answer. How many extra EHCP applications the government expects local authorities will have to assess? To conclude, since the election, the Minister has said the Labour government is committed and wants to absolutely fix the SEND system. I know she means that, and we want to work with her to achieve that. And every honourable member wants to ensure that children and their families get the support that their child deserves to realise their potential. So the offer that we have is let's work together to improve the outcomes and give children the best start.